231 people step onto a Boeing 767 in Newark. 9 hours later, they slide down a white-blanketed runway in Warsaw on the belly of a 150-ton airliner. No wheels, no landing gear. A catastrophic disaster, right? Wrong. Every single person walked away without a scratch. People call the belly landing of LOT Flight 16 a mechanical miracle. They call the aviator a hero who defied impossible odds. But they are missing the real truth. Everyone calls this an unavoidable crisis. It was entirely preventable. I can prove it. This large aircraft, a marvel of modern engineering, scraped its engines against the asphalt because of a tiny, overlooked button near the floor. One popped circuit breaker. That's it. That was the whole issue. The backup landing gear operated flawlessly. If the crew noticed that single breaker, the wheels would have dropped. The plane would have landed normally. I am going to show you exactly how a penny-sized piece of plastic brought a giant airliner to its knees and why blaming the aviators ignores reality completely. November 1st, 2011. Flight 16 leaves Newark Liberty International at 4:19 UTC. The aircraft flies as a Boeing 767-300ER named Poznan. Everything seems ideal. They climb into the dark sky. 30 minutes into the flight, the crew commands the landing gear and flaps to retract. Boom! A flexible hydraulic hose on the right main landing gear ruptures. Fluid blasts out into the atmosphere. The center hydraulic pressure drops straight to zero. Gone. Just like that. Captain Tadeusz Wrona and First Officer Jerzy Swark run the standard troubleshooting checklist. The center hydraulic circuit sits dead. This means the primary gear operation holds no pressure to operate. They call the airline's maintenance center. Do they turn around? No. They decide to cross the Atlantic Ocean anyway. They control a heavy aircraft loaded with fuel. Landing immediately with that much weight poses extreme danger, so they keep flying to Warsaw to burn the heavy fuel off. 9 hours over open water with a dead primary hydraulic line. Think about that for a second. You sit in economy, unaware that your aircraft is already bleeding out. Think about the psychology of that decision. Commanding a giant Boeing out over the unforgiving Atlantic Ocean with a dead center hydraulic circuit is a silent gamble. No fluid, no pressure, no guarantees. Flying on a known failure right out of the gate is risky, but aviation rules dictate managing risk, not running from it. Dropping a fully loaded jet onto a runway risks immediate structural collapse. The gear might shatter under the weight of a full fuel load, yet they push forward. Hour after hour, the engines drink the fuel, slowly bleeding off the weight as they cross time zones. The crew remains isolated in the cockpit, managing a crippled machine while the passengers eat their meals and fall asleep in the cabin. The disconnect between the tension up front and the calm in the back feels chilling. It represents the ultimate tightrope walk. To grasp the stakes, you must understand the machine. The Boeing 767 features 3 independent hydraulic networks: left, right, and center. They do not share fluid. The left and right setups control primary flight functions like the rudder, ensuring control. But the center setup is the workhorse. It operates the flaps, slats, and massive landing gear. When that hose ruptured, the primary gear deployment vanished. The backup design, however, relies on electricity. It bypasses fluid entirely, using electric motors to release the mechanical hooks so gravity can drop the wheels. A brilliant, fail-safe architecture. But even the best backup design is completely useless without electricity. How many huge failures start with something this invisible? Subscribe to this channel and you will start noticing how many hidden flaws hide right under your nose. 9 hours and 20 minutes pass. Flight 16 finally reaches Warsaw Chopin Airport. It is 12:22 UTC. Time to lower the landing gear. Wrona and Swark hit the primary control. Nothing happens. They expected this outcome. They knew the center hydraulic circuit ran dry. No problem at all. Boeing built an electric alternate gear deployment method for exactly this scenario. It bypasses the fluid hydraulics completely. Swark hits the backup button. Nothing. No mechanical thud. No green lights. Silence. Hard to imagine. The primary gear failed from a ruptured hose. The backup gear just failed from an unknown ghost. Now they face an enormous problem. 231 lives hang by a thread. They abort the landing immediately. The flight crew declares an emergency. They pull the huge jet up and enter a holding pattern over the city. They need to run the emergency checklists. They need to dump the remaining weight. And they desperately need to figure out why their fail-safe method refuses to work. Word hits the ground fast. A heavy passenger jet with 0 landing gear circles the Polish capital. The military steps in. 2 Polish Air Force F-16 fighter jets scramble and punch into the sky. They intercept the civilian airliner right over Warsaw in the afternoon. Imagine looking out your tiny passenger window and seeing a military fighter jet off your wingtip. The fighter pilots pull up tight against the Boeing. They execute a visual check of the belly. They radio the cockpit with the verdict. The news sounds brutal. The gear doors remain sealed shut. No wheels hang down. The belly sits flat. Now Captain Wrona knows for an absolute fact. The instruments speak the truth. The backup controls offer 0 help. He must put this enormous machine onto the ground without wheels. They circle for 74 minutes of burning jet fuel and staring at the inevitable. Down in the cockpit, First Officer Swark fights a losing battle. He gets on the radio with ground technicians. They tell him to check the alternate gear motor breaker. He searches the panel. The pilot attempts a reset. It does not matter. The motor receives 0 power. Why? Because an upstream breaker killed the current. That breaker is C829. It sits on a panel called P6-1. And where is P6-1 located? Down low, right behind the co-pilot's seat, close to the floor, in a dark, unlit area of the flight deck. Swark cannot see it. He does not know it popped. The current stays completely cut off from the backup gear. A single piece of plastic, the size of a fingernail, dooms this aircraft. The official Boeing checklist in their hands does not tell them to check C829, so they ignore it entirely. They follow the manual, and the manual leads them straight into a concrete runway. If this breakdown of the facts is hitting different, take a second to hit like. It genuinely helps the algorithm show this truth to more people who need to see it. Time runs out. The fuel tanks finally red light enough. Wrona lines up the Boeing 767 with runway 33. Down below, emergency crews transformed the concrete. They sprayed the entire runway with a deep, thick layer of fire-preventing foam. Fire trucks line the grass. Ambulances wait with their engines running. Every single person on the ground expects carnage. You do not slide a heavy jet on its belly without tearing metal, sparking fires, and breaking bones. It just never happens. But Captain Wrona flies as a seasoned veteran. A lifetime of glider championships means Wrona knows exactly how to fly without engine power. Treating a 150-ton commercial airliner like a silent sailplane, he commands the crew to brace for impact. The ground rushes up. The foam strip looks narrow from the cockpit window. The passengers tuck their heads down. The cabin goes quiet. 13:39 UTC. The tail skid makes contact first, then the engines. Metal hits asphalt. The sound echoes with deafening force. The jet grinds into the foam. Sparks shoot out from underneath the fuselage, but the chemical layer instantly smothers them. The plane slides. It screams down the runway, tearing the bottom of the engine cowlings to shreds. The friction feels violent, but the nose stays up. Wrona holds it up as long as humanly possible to prevent the front from crumpling. Finally, gravity wins. The nose drops. The belly slams into the runway. At 1340 UTC, the jet slides to a dead stop. It actually worked. A perfect, dead center landing with 0 wheels. Passenger John Megaropoulos spoke to reporters right after the crash. He claimed the touchdown felt so smooth that he did not even realize the plane landed without wheels. Think about the supreme mechanical mastery required to pull that off. Let's break down the sheer violence of that slide. When 150 tons of metal meets concrete at landing speed, the laws of physics demand a brutal tax. The engines lack the armor to act as landing skids. The cowlings function as thin aerodynamic shells, not steel plates. The second they touch the ground, they begin to disintegrate. The immense weight of the aircraft crushes down, compressing the structure, searching for a weak point to snap the fuselage in half. This is where flight crews usually lose control. A wing catches, the plane spins, the fuel tanks rupture, and the entire scene vanishes in a fireball. But Wrona keeps the wings level. He rides the rudder pedals like a master, balancing the dying jet on a razor's edge. He forces the aircraft to track straight through the foam, fighting the chaotic drag of tearing metal. Pure, unadulterated skill. The aircraft stops moving. Now the clock starts. A small fire breaks out on the right engine. Fire crews pounce on it immediately and drown the flames in heavy chemicals. Inside the cabin, flight attendants scream the evacuation orders. Doors pop open. Emergency slides inflate rapidly. People throw themselves down the chutes onto the foam-covered concrete. 231 people. Every single passenger. Every single crew member, they all get out. Total time? 90 seconds. 1.5 minutes to completely empty a smoking airliner. You know how many injuries they recorded? 0. Not one broken bone. Not one smoke inhalation case. Nothing. The evacuation unfolded flawlessly. Wrona instantly became a national hero. In Poland, the public started using a brand new phrase, to fly like a crow. Wrona translates to crow in Polish. It became the ultimate compliment for skill and grace under pressure. Think about what it took to prepare that runway. While Wrona circled overhead, ground crews scrambled to spray thousands of feet of fire-retarding foam. This created a protective barrier between sparking metal and volatile fuel. Fire engines lined the field, and local emergency response teams prepared for a mass casualty event. If a wing ruptured, fire could engulf the fuselage in seconds. The airport shut down, bracing for a potential disaster. It was a large, coordinated effort running parallel to the cockpit drama. The wreckage sits dead in the middle of Warsaw Chopin Airport. The facility shuts down completely. No flights in, no flights out. It stays quiet for 50 straight hours while crews scramble to clear the mess. Cranes arrive to lift the broken jet off the ground. Investigators from the Polish State Commission on Aircraft Accident Investigation march onto the scene. They step inside the flight deck to figure out why the backup system failed. They walk straight to the breaker panel and find the culprit immediately. C-829 is tripped. It sits in the open position. This was the lifeline for the alternate gear. The investigators reach down. They push the little button back in. They reset the breaker. Done. Then they run a physical test on the aircraft. The test results stagger everyone. The motors whir to life. The landing gear doors open wide. The wheels drop and lock into place. The alternate gear operated exactly as designed. It just lacked power. One tiny breaker, accidentally bumped off, caused a major transatlantic emergency. That is the gut punch of this story. Wrona saved a plane from a problem that never actually existed. The machinery did exactly what engineers designed it to do. So who holds the blame? The official investigation report from December 2017 pointed the finger at the hydraulic leak, the popped C-829 breaker, and the crew's failure to spot it. But calling it a crew failure ignores reality. You cannot blame a pilot for missing a switch hidden by his own seat in the dark. Let's talk about Boeing's specific role in this mess. The aircraft rolled off production line number 659. It left the factory without physical protective guards over the circuit breakers on panel P61. They remained fully exposed to the open air. Anyone grabbing a bag, adjusting a seat, or shifting their feet could bump that panel and pop a breaker without noticing. Boeing knew this vulnerability existed. The company fixed it on later models. Starting with production line 863, engineers installed protective collars over those switches so they resisted accidental trips. But Flight 16 flew the older setup. It was a physical trap waiting to be sprung. The pilots received an official manual that omitted instructions to check that specific breaker. Their training had left them unprepared for this specific blind spot. The physical layout of the flight deck worked against them. The manual itself failed them. The aircraft itself never flew again. The physical damage from grinding along the concrete proved too extreme to fix. Both engines shredded beyond repair. The lower rear fuselage scraped raw by the harsh friction. In November 2013, inspectors declared the Boeing 767 a total loss. They sent the jet to the scrapyard. A multi-million-dollar machine destroyed because a penny-sized breaker bumped a stray shoe. It serves as proof of how fragile these complex networks really are. We look at passenger jets and see flying fortresses of redundant safety. We trust them with our lives. But the truth hides a darker reality. A single broken hose and an accidentally bumped breaker strip away every layer of safety engineering in an instant. The design relies on absolute perfection, and perfection does not exist. Captain Wrona survived the ordeal and secured his place in aviation history. He saved 231 lives with his bare hands. But real life does not always grant a permanent happy ending. Wrona's son, Tadeusz Wrona, followed directly in his father's footsteps. He became a commercial pilot, sharing that exact same bloodline of aviation mastery. But tragedy strikes where engineering cannot reach. On December 13th, 2024, Tadeusz passed away at 40. He lost a battle with acute myeloid leukemia. The man who conquered the sky could not save his own son from a biological failure. It puts the mechanical drama of Flight 16 into a sobering perspective. Machines can be fixed, analyzed, and redesigned. Circuit breakers receive guards. Runways receive foam. Human lives do not have backup switches. You get one run, one flight, one chance to land the plane. We want to believe we are in control, but stories like this prove how quickly the illusion shatters. If any of this stuck with you, or if you felt the sheer weight of what those pilots carried that day, like and subscribe. There is so much more to uncover.